friends, and thanks again for joining us here on Expanded Perspectives with me, Cam Hale, and mi amigo today, Mr. Kyle Filson.
How's it going, everybody? I am super stoked. I'm excited. I'm cold. It's a little cold here in the studio. Had to turn the heater on.
Right?
I wish I would have turned it on about an hour before we sat down instead of 5 minutes. But, yeah, so like everything above my chest is nice and comfortable. Everything below is really cold.
It's small.
I have to get a sleeping bag in here.
It's small. Everything below is...
Speaking of small,
here we go.
We were talking a couple episodes back about these drones, and they're always increasing these drones. Did you see this? This comes from phys.org, and this Chinese drone maker unveils this human carrying drone. Now, this is pretty cool. It says the Guangzhou Chinese-based company pulled the cloth off the Ehang 184 at the Las Vegas Convention Center during the CES Gadget Show in a company video showing it flying. It looks like a small helicopter, but with 4 double propellers spinning parallel to the ground, just like these drones you see. Now, this electric-powered drone can be fully charged in 2 hours. Get this, Cam. It can carry up to 220 pounds.
Damn it.
And it can fly for 23 minutes at sea level.
I got to lose 6 pounds.
You can't work this drone.
I can't even get in. I'd like to see it. I'm going to set in it. I'm gonna date myself right here, folks. Please tell me some of y'all have seen the old movie Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah.
Okay, you know when the dude, it's not, who is it? It's he's one of the football players, and he's like the big dumb one. He's the great big guy, you know, with the big, always drinking the beer out of the big mug and all that stuff. You remember when they have to like get on that barrel, and they all get to pull the rope on that barrel, and they try to buck each other off?
Yeah.
And remember when he's sitting on the barrel, and all those guys are pulling, and he ain't moving? Yeah. He's just sitting there barely wiggling and drinking. That would be that drone trying to take off with me in it. Just, and those Chinese guys would just be yelling, just going crazy. I couldn't understand what they were saying.
Right.
It would be horrible. This thing is pretty cool. Do you see how high it flies?
No, how high does it go?
Maximum altitude, 11,500 feet, and a top speed of 63 miles an hour.
Now, anybody that's seen these quadricopter drones, like at Best Buy or any of these gadget stores, you know, they're cool. They're very popular. You can get them now really cheap. $30, $40, you can get them at Toys R Us. It's a little drone. Your kids flying around. I've got one. They're pretty neat. This just looks like that, but they blew it up.
It's big.
It's big. And you sit in it.
Well,
and
it ain't that big. It won't hold me. Stupid.
It says it's designed to fly about 1,000 to 1,600 feet off the ground. And what you can do is you can give it commands like take me, take off, and the thing will take off itself. And then you can give it a destination like take me to my office, and the thing will fly you there.
That sounds terrible.
You land there, and then you plug it back in. I guess it's charged for your commute home. So is the world truly going to be like the Jetsons? Is it going to be filled with these drones going everywhere?
The bad thing is how many times like you know, you like your phone goes off and it's Siri in your pocket and it looks up something because it misunderstood. What if you're like talking to your friend and it misunderstands and it starts doing something? Nah, I'd have to fly it by hand. You don't want that thing to misinterpret what you've got going on. Mm-hmm. But they say it's designed to fly about 1,000 to 1,650 foot off the ground. To me, those power chutes, we've had friends that's had those power chutes.
Oh, yeah.
And they always say everything, you know, less than 1,000 feet's where the most fun is because you can see everything. You're flying over the lake.
Explain to people what the power chute is.
A power chute is, folks, is it looks like a doom buggy frame, for lack of a better term, and it's got a big prop on the back of it in a cage, and it's got wheels and all that, and then it's got a parachute on it. And then when you fire that prop up and gas it, it kind of plumes the parachute, and then as it starts going forward, the parachute provides the lift, and the prop that you're sitting in front of provides, you know, kind of like the power to go. And then it's got wheels, and you control it with your feet. By pushing left and right, it pulls the chute left or right and allows you to turn. And, I mean, you want power chute, all one word. Look them up. They're pretty interesting. I've always wanted one. The problem is I would probably end up flying into power lines and something like, you know, it wouldn't be great. But I've got several friends of mine that have had them in video, you know, flying over the lake. They would get them to fly over property that they would buy, things like that. It's very interesting. This was all, of course, pre-drone time. But this right here looks really, really cool. What's cool about it is the way you can take off and land. That's what's pretty neat. As soon as they get it to where you can spend more than 23 minutes in the air, I would probably really think it was even cooler, but right now I don't. But also, too, it is electric, so I get that part. That's pretty neat. I just got to give a shout-out to pretty much all of our fans. Every one of y'all is awesome.
Yeah.
When we find funny, silly, crazy stuff and we start posting it and it pops up, we'll put it on YouTube or Twitter. Y'all come back. Just it's so much fun with everybody. Look, it's me. Sorry. It's all this stuff. You guys are great. And what I'm talking about is we posted this a few days ago. This is great. And I'm going to read this to y'all from Cryptozoology News. It says man spots Neanderthal in North Carolina. Folks, the response we got from y'all, privately and publicly, was awesome. It took place in the Kings Mountain in North Carolina. It says a man in North Carolina says he recently encountered a being that resembled a Neanderthal. Now, Bernard Tillman on Thursday told Cryptozoology News that he was with his dog in the Kings Mountain area in November. Now, folks, I'm pretty sure when I first read this, it said November of 2016. But they've gone back and fixed the typo. Now it says 2015.
It was just a typo, man. You never messed up typing something? Come on.
Right? And it says when he come across this creature. Now, this is what he says. I was taking our dog for his daily ride, said the 66-year-old retired man. It was 6 p.m. We were approaching a small creek on the downgrade of the road, and I was looking at the 4 feet saplings where they had cut all the trees down. And he believes now the unidentified being did not see him and his dog coming. He says, there he stood. We must have surprised him because he was just standing real still. The sun was setting between me and him. And he said he explained that the whole encounter lasted about 30 seconds. Now, he described this creature as being 10 foot tall and walking on 2 legs, and it was a humanoid. He says he was huge. He was massive in the back and chest. His hair looked black from the side profile. His neck, his head, his nose, and his lower jaw, he just looked like a Neanderthal. Now, he was not able to photograph this thing. And then, of course, it goes on and it talks about, what some people have seen and claim. I thought it was interesting, just his description, because it fits into the whole humanoid or the devolved human idea of Bigfoot, of what it truly was and all that. And then, of course, those areas in North Carolina, it's beautiful. That whole area is beautiful, and it's remote and all that. So maybe there is some devolved humanoid-style, Bigfoot-looking folk running around up there. But just the way everybody responded to this article was hilarious. Thank y'all all so much on Facebook for just playing along, going along. You guys are great, man. I love each and every one of y'all. Y'all are awesome.
You know how I've talked about previously before on the show that I really want a Tesla? An automobile.
Yeah.
Have you seen the new software that's just come out, version 7.1?
For the Tesla?
Yeah.
Do they make it scoot now? I know that they can always upgrade. Like they were talking about, this car does this, and Elon Musk could be like, oh, really?
No.
Well, now my car does it.
Right. No, this is more in the totally autonomous cars. This is nothing to do with speed, but this new upgrade allows the Tesla to come when you summon it. Like you got a fob. Say you're at your office.
Okay.
You can tell the thing where to park. Like you have a designated parking spot. Even if it's in a parking garage, say a couple blocks away, you hit the fob, the thing will drive itself to you. Then you just get in it and drive home.
Seriously.
It'll come when you call it, like an obedient pet. There's videos on YouTube showing that. Is that not awesome?
That is awesome.
I'll put links to it in the show notes. Let's take a break, folks. And when we get back from the break, Cam is going to be getting into the Georgia Guidestones along with America's Stonehenge. You're listening to Expanded Perspectives. And we're back with Expanded Perspectives. Cam, recently on the Expanded Perspectives Elite Show, for those of you that didn't listen to that, we had Micah Hanks on the show, and we were talking about the Georgia Guidestones that he had driven down there and taken.
He actually visited. Yeah,
and those things are very interesting, and a lot of people don't really know the mysterious circumstances surrounding them. I mean, they don't even know who built them, right? I mean, there's a couple theories on who it was.
It's pretty wild, yeah.
What was it you were telling me off air about that?
Well, Okay, it's always like Kyle and I hardly. There's times that we plan these shows out months in advance, and we do all the digging and the research. And there's other times that it just kind of hits you out of the blue, and you kind of get that feeling like, man, we need to talk about that. What brought this around, as Kyle alluded to, was us on the Elite X with Micah, and then we got a bunch of emails and some questions coming back. It's like some of our outside of our country, non-U.S. listeners were like, what are you talking about Georgia Guidestones? Some people had, and here's what I had learned about it. I thought it was relatively new. It's not. It's been there a while.
Oh, really? I thought it was like in the 90s or something.
No. And that's what we're going to get into, is because it's one of those things that if I would have known it, I would like to go see it. And I am going to go check it out. I think it's something I'd like to go kind of look into. But for those of you that aren't aware, we're going to discuss that. We're going to get into some other stuff too. But this is what I want to talk about. This takes place. It's in Elbert County in Georgia. Basically, Elbert County is about 90 miles east of Atlanta, Georgia. Up there in hot Atlanta, baby.
Mm-hmm.
And it stands, what they say, on the highest point in Elbert County, which is kind of wild. Now, the structure is referred to by some as America's Stonehenge, but that's not true, because we're going to discuss America's Stonehenge. That's kind of what led me down that other path. I'll give you a breakdown, folks, of what it looks like. It's 6 granite slabs. All right, they're 19 feet 3 inches tall, and each slab weighs, or here you go, or it weighs 237,746 pounds each, for the whole thing. I'm sorry, not each. That's what the entire thing weighs. Now it stands, there's a slab right in the center, and then there's 4 around it. If you can see my hands. And there's 4 that stand up around it. And they said like there's like a capstone, and it's on top of all of them. And then there's like a little stone tablet in part of it too that's set in the ground a little ways. Anyway, there's a bunch of interesting stuff that takes place. It's written in a ton of languages on it. There's like these 10 guidelines, and they're written in 8 modern languages, and then there's a shorter message, and they're written in ancient languages: Babylonian, Sanskrit, hieroglyphics, and Greek. Classic Greek is what it's written in. Now, what's written on the stones is what's really the most interesting. And I'm going to read it. They call it the 10 guidelines for humanity, but this is what it says: maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Unite humanity with a living new language. Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Balance personal rights with social duties. Prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. And be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. Everybody that you can kind of come across that writes anything in blogs about all this or has discussed it online, love every bit of it till you get to one point.
What's that?
Keep humanity under 500 million. Because they feel as though that's the Illuminati's way of telling everybody, this has to be a set race, or a set, not a race, it's a set number of people. Where they like, okay, We're going to have to kill off a bunch of them. Because, you're talking 500 million on the world. That's not a lot.
Well, but I can't argue with that. In all honesty, wouldn't the planet be much better off if there was under 500 million people on there?
As long as they weren't a bunch of jerks. If you had 500 million good people.
That's the problem. That's the problem, right?
Yeah, right. You don't want 500 million like idiots running around on here. There's a difference there. But like I told you, here's, like you talked about, Kyle, you thought it was back in the 90s. But when did you first ever hear about it? I only heard about it probably 3 or 4 years ago.
I heard about it probably a decade ago, but I don't remember where. It could have.
So you didn't pay any attention to it. You just heard the name, maybe, and that was it.
Yeah, for the most part.
Thought it was kind of like a little monument somewhere put in a field, and that was about it.
That's what I thought. I thought some landowner had just had money and just erected it and put it out there.
It was unveiled March 22nd, 1980.
Oh wow!
Yeah, right.
So it's over 30 years old.
Yes. Yeah.
Man, I did not know
that. Me either. Now, here's the story that we're going to get into it. This is the part that really gets interesting. They say from the beginning, it's pretty much been shrouded in some sort of mystery. Now, in 1979, a stranger, folks, who identified himself as R.C. Christian, appeared at the office of the Elberton Granite Finishing Company. Now, let me tell y'all this. Elberton actually calls itself, there in Georgia, the granite capital of the world. If you do any research on this entire place, like if you look at the high school football field, when you walk into their area, like most people, it has like turnstiles and a little building and stuff you walk through. And Elberton's is all granite. It's like a granite archway entrance as you go into it. There is monuments in that town everywhere of granite. It's what they do. And like I said, they call themselves, I want to say I read somewhere that they was like 9 or 10 of the largest granite quarries in the U.S. was there. I forgot. Now, of course, I'm talking out of my hind end, but Elberton considers themselves the granite capital of the world. So Joe Findley was the president of the Elberton Granite Finishing Company when this mysterious R.C. Christian came in, identified himself, and he outlined this project that he was wanting to build a large monument to conservation, is what he called it. Now, Finley said that he told the guy, look, he's like, their company, we normally don't do any wholesale work, okay? And they didn't even take like direct commissions like this. But this Mr. Christian says that he explained to Mr. Finley the concept. And Mr. Finley was like, you know what? I kind of like the idea. This is pretty interesting. We'll go on from there. So it is said that he put Mr. Christian in touch with some local banks, and Christian selected a Wyatt C. Martin, which was president of Granite City Bank, to kind of be the overseer of this project, okay?
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting thing. Now, Mr. Martin said that he insisted that Mr. Christian, who introduced himself, reveal his true identity so Mr. Martin, of course, could check his background. Apparently this was done. The banker was satisfied. He said, okay, everything's cool. This guy's legit. Let's go ahead and move forward. Now, it goes on in the story that Mr. Martin says that he swore never to reveal the true identity of Mr. Christian. And as far as everybody can find, he's never done so, period. So they don't really know who the man was that first came up with the idea. This Mr. Christian's kind of an enigma. Now, Mr. Martin said that R.C. wanted the stones erected in a remote area away from the main tourist centers. And he said he'd also had selected Georgia because of the high-quality granite and the mild climate. And then the story goes on to say that they believe that Mr. Christian's actually had some family that was from Georgia way, way back in the day. Now, you got to think of this. The money starts coming into this thing. It's not just the idea of the stone, paying for the stone itself, but the transportation of the size of these stones. By the time you quarry these things out and you do your sandblasting or your carving into the stone to put the letters in.
How tall did you say they were?
19 feet, 3 inches.
Wow. Yeah, see, that's bigger than I thought it was, too.
Yeah. So by the time you talk about doing not just the work, the quarrying of the stone and the work on the stone, but the transportation, it's quite a bit of money. So with that being said, here's what's funny. Is part of the story was that Mr. R.C. Christian said money is no object. You know, he'd gone to the bank. The whole thing is like, we don't care.
Yeah.
We just want this done. And then I've heard a story that they had picked another part of an area there in Georgia because it was where the county lines had almost lined up through the center of Georgia and almost cut Georgia in half. And they had picked a part in another county. Wasn't even supposed to be there where it is right now. And that's where it was going to be. Well, they decided not to because Mr. Martin and Mr. Finley and them are like, look, it's going to be an absorbent amount of money just to transfer the stones that far. Let's pick a place in this county. So Mr. Christian, of course, RC was like, oh, okay, well, let's just pick a high hill here. To me, that's right. Instantly, I start going, you smell that? The story ain't lining up already. You're going to tell me that money's no object. You're going to go through all this secrecy, but then you're not going to finish the project where you initially wanted to finish the project in the dead center of Georgia.
Yeah.
You're just going to pick this town up there. The reason you pick this town up there is because all the people that built this are from this town up there. So you come back in, you go through all this. Like I said, they pick this thing out. There's even a story that goes on that says that when he came back in to visit somebody that Mr. Christian, when I say he, when he comes back in to talk to, I don't remember if it was Mr. Martin or who it was, but there's part of the story says that he actually had a model that he had made himself and that he had put in a shoebox. And he popped the shoebox open and was like, this is how I want it to look. This is what it's going to look like in the whole thing. And allegedly people still have this on display somewhere and all these things. Who knows? You find all this conjecture when you get online and start looking at any of this stuff. There's some really interesting parts, though, but there's an inscription on there that actually states that the sponsors were a small group of Americans who seek the age of reason.
Huh.
Now, I've heard all kinds of stories, and you can go on YouTube and get lost in videos where guys have got into this, and I know that Alex Jones has done videos on this. It's extremely interesting to me because of, I guess, the secrecy upon which it was erected. Instead of one guy just taking the load on his shoulders and saying, hey, look, I'm the guy that built it. These are my ideals or whatnot. I guess they already knew when they built it, even in 1980, they knew how much, flack they were going to get by saying some of the stuff on here. If you removed that under 500 million, if you removed that completely, the stones sound like a really nice way to live your life.
Yeah.
Be good, the whole deal.
Yeah.
But it's that one little part that makes everybody instantly flip the Illuminati switch, the New World Order switch, anywhere you start looking into it.
Oh, they want to eradicate us. They're telling us right now.
Exactly. There's a story I found, too, online that they said that there was a religious leader in the area that actually was speaking out against it, so much so that he had to relocate his church and everything. He had to leave the county.
Really?
Now, I don't know if there's any truth to any of that, but that's what I had found. And I also found, too, that in 2008, there was actually some graffiti done and polyurethane paint used on the stones.
Oh, really?
Well, here's what's funny. They called what was written on the stones, "Death to the New World Order." And Wired magazine actually did a cover or did a little part on this whole thing. And they, in the magazine, said that this was the first serious act of vandalism in the Guidestones history.
Really?
Now, in 2014, there was an employee of the maintenance there in the county area of maintenance, contacted the FBI and said that they'd been vandalized again, and it was actually written on there, "I am Isis, goddess of love." So it just, if you look at all, there was a bunch of stuff where people were like, they thought it was Satanists that had built it. There was a lot of hate around these stones. And there's still a lot of stuff. Like people say all the time, like I said, I could get into this stuff for hours and hours. We could discuss this because it leads you down the path of the New World Order. You start looking at all this and you start getting in all these, I guess, I know the Rosicrucian idea behind it was set because there's a hole that allows you to look through the stone and see the North Star. Anytime it's in the sky, you can see it through this stone, the way it's, archaeoastronomy. Yes.
Yeah, there's a hole right through there, right?
That you can look.
Line up with equinoxes or anything?
Yeah, well, they say that there's supposed to be a way that you read the calendar. There's supposed to be a calendar on it somewhere that when the sun shines perfectly into that center piece of stone where the others are around it, that it works like a calendar. There's all these tales and all these stories that go around with it. Pretty much from what everybody's come up with is this R.C. Christian's a make-believe guy. They made it all up. They believe this Finley and this Martin and a lot of other people were involved in this whole deal. It has like some sort of Masonic background, they believe also. I would like to know more about it. There's one person I know that knows a tremendous amount about it, and that's Randall Carlson. Randall Carlson goes there. He studied it, the whole thing. He's a Mason himself. It'd be a really interesting thing to get Randall on. I would like to take a trip to Atlanta.
Yeah.
And go see the Guidestones and then go see, I could talk about go see Randall and Cameron and hang out and talk math and ancient, catastrophes and whatnot. But I tell you all this story. Like I said, folks, that's pretty much it. I mean, if you want to dig into it, watch some videos, I urge you to do so. It's extremely interesting. It's more of a mystery than it is of like, old ancient histories and things like that. But it's extremely interesting because it's just fun to think of not just who built it, but why. Why was it put together? Why was it, erected the way it was and where it was? But that got me to thinking because of that one line, America's Stonehenge. Now, we've talked about America's Stonehenge a lot before, you and I have, of discussing, what if it was tied to this? What if it was tied to that? There's some books written about it. We've even talked about, doing some interviews with the person that runs it. It's an extremely interesting little thing. And I want to get into America's Stonehenge. Now, here's what's funny is I guess you could call it the commercialization of such things. Everything has to make money. I mean, that's just the way it works today. It's hard to keep things going unless it makes money. If you go to America's StonehengeUSA.com, that's their website. They do snowshoeing, where they do, trail walking, things like that, candlelight snowshoeing in that area. They have alpacas. Like, you go there to, I guess.
I love alpacas.com.
Yeah, I guess you go to see them. There is a list of the girls and the boys' alpacas. It's almost like, I guess, like a petting zoo, maybe, I guess is what it's for.
Tell people where this is. Like, where is America's Stonehenge?
Okay. You want to get into where, all right, America's Stonehenge is it's 30 acres within the town of Salem, New Hampshire. It's basically in the northeast United States is where it's at. Now, it's open to the public for a fee. I want to say it's $12 for adults if you want to go check it out. Like I said, they have all this stuff there. Large rocks, stone structures. They have all kinds of this very, very interesting stuff there. I believe you can actually even do like little archaeological digs or something there that you can go and like help out with if you wanted to. But yeah, it's in Salem, New Hampshire, which, I mean, that's got some neat history to it to start with. But we're going to get into this. Okay, the complex was surveyed by a fellow named Charles Pearson back in 1988, and there was a number of large prominent stones, and he said that limited, those very large stones happen to be the ones that make up there's a significant archaeoastronomy, like an alignment to this area. And he said that the statistical probability of it being an accident is almost impossible, that it was like a design. But he said it's not by design because it demonstrates a complete misinterpretation of the obvious physical evidence at the site. So what he's saying is people that basically don't think it's done. He's like, well, it looks like it was lined up no matter what. Like you could say, it's kind of by luck. But he's like, no, I don't think so. I think it was done on purpose. Now, there's over 100 standing stones. And of course, they can be adjusted around and all this. There's a lot of crystal mining in that area. Mm-hmm. There's like an old on-site well that has fresh water on it. There's tons of stuff. The quartz is a big, big deal. That's all through this area too. That area, and
the rows of these stone fences. I think we've talked about it before.
Yes.
And a lot of these what are called cairns.
Yes.
That people are claiming are root cellar stuff, and I mean. All this stone too is dry laid stone. I mean, it's awesome.
Yes,
it's beautiful. I mean, and there's no doubt that it was totally man made, and it was made by some culture that I believe was here.
Yeah, well, and that's
long before Columbus.
That's where the thing starts getting sketchy when you start looking at the history. Okay, there's an archaeologist, Warren Dexter. He says that quartz was a very valuable commodity to the ancient people. But quartz was equally, if not more important, for spiritual reasons and mystical science, and said, in fact, it was purposely embedded in triangular chunks at the back of many New England and European chambers, positioned to be illuminated by the sun as it shone through the roof openings only on those very few days, usually the equinoxes. So when the sun could pass through the roof opening. Now, quartz can be found not only in areas where it naturally abounds, but in areas where it is scarce, having been brought there for ceremonial purposes by ancient peoples. He says that one of the central features of the Mystery Hill site, which is what we're talking about, America's Stonehenge, is known as Mystery Hill, is that there's a sacrificial table or altar there and has a 4.5-ton grooved slab that people are still debating about what they think went on there. Now, there's the curator of Mystery Hill and an archaeologist named Robert Stone. And he believes that it was used for sacrifice. He said others believe it was used for sacrifices, though, but not only because of its central location, its size, but because the oracle speaking tube was beneath it, as well as a carved channel, allegedly for draining blood, on top of the surface. Okay, now it's positioned on 4 stone legs that aren't just stone legs. They've been actually hand-worked. You can look at the tooling and things. And it's located at the center on the site in a very large courtyard. I tell you all that because that kind of gets the blood flowing. It kind of gets the idea of, maybe like because the first thing when I started really reading into this and started looking into this is you start thinking about the Mayan connection to Georgia. Well, remember we talked about that a while back. We talked about it. And then you start thinking, well, maybe it's up there. Is that did they make it that far? Would it still be considered they're Native Americans? They're not, pre-Columbian, but maybe they were pre-Columbian as traveling up there doing their thing then.
And if you look at this table, I mean, it does look like it's grooved so that something would run out.
Yes.
Something that was upon it.
But I've got some answers for that.
Okay.
That's a little bit different. Now, of course, like I said, the origin, the purpose of all this has been attributed to a mixture of things. And that's where we're going to take this off with is apparently there's some land practices of farmers back in the 18th and 19th centuries there that would construct certain little structures and things. And, this fellow named William Goodwin, which was the man that owned it back in the 1930s. But anyway, so there's a number of hypotheses, of course, exist. It's like we talked about is, could it be how it was built, who built it, things along those lines. It was first dubbed Mystery Hill when Mr. Goodwin, who at the time was an insurance agent, he actually bought it in 1936. And this was the official name until 1982, and of course it was renamed America's Stonehenge. Now it's confusing because of William Goodwin. Some of the history of this is confusing because he himself already went into it with an idea that Mystery Hill was proof of what he believed was Irish monks that had lived long before Christopher Columbus was there. And it was an idea that he wanted to popularize. He wanted to push. So, like many people do when they make mistakes trying to push their ideas, he went in there and he moved a lot of the stones, a lot of where they were formerly at.
Really?
And so he kind of busted up a lot of the archaeological record of what people wanted to see, as far as being able to tell exactly what it was. So he had moved some of it around. Now, the current owners, there's a private company called America's Stonehenge Foundation, and they themselves actually even say in their paperwork and their writings that one of the reasons of the enigma of the Mystery Hill is so deep is because of Mr. Goodwin. Because they don't
help
really
out by
know.
doing that.
Yeah,
You should
exactly.
have left it alone, yeah.
Exactly. Now, there's a lot of proponents of pre-Columbian, non-Native American origin to the site, and they like to argue that the stones are encased in trees, some of them, and that they would have actually sprouted before the arrival of the first colonists. So they could tell by the age of the trees, they're like, look, that rock, something grew through it. There's no way. It couldn't be here. And that they also point to the fact that there are some similarities between these ruins and the Phoenician architecture that they had found across the waters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, there's supposed to be some marks on some of these stones that they say actually resemble some ancient writing that they think that came Old World writing. Now, Barry Fell, the late Barry Fell, was a marine biologist from Harvard University.
I've heard of him, yeah.
Okay, now he claimed that these inscriptions, he was also an epigrapher, but he claimed that these inscriptions at the site were Ogham.
Oh.
Yes, and we've already known that whole area is kind of littered with some of this stuff to start with. But he says that he believes it was Ogham, Phoenician, and Iberian scripts. And he actually wrote a book, and in the book he talks about all this. The book is called America BC. But Barry's book talks about this. Now, there's been artifacts found on this site itself that led many archaeologists involved to this conclusion that the stones were actually assembled for a number of reasons, but they were assembled by local farmers. Now, that's what some of these archaeologists believe by what they found on site. And here's the example.
And I think of this happened much more recently.
18th, 19th centuries.
Really?
Yes. And here's what we were just talking about. The sacrificial stone, okay, is a prime example of this. Like you said, it has a groove. We discussed it. It has a groove, and it was believed by many to channel the blood of the victims. It's got the speaking tube. It's got the whole thing. But there's also a thing called lye leaching stones that old farmers used to extract lye from wood ashes. And that's the very first step to making homemade soap, is to get your lye.
Right.
Those stones, those lye leaching stones, have been found on numerous old farmhouses all up in that area. So.
Right. Does that mean it's much older?
Well, no. It means it's much newer. Yeah, it's not near as old. They're saying that it's just a farmer from the 18th century.
Oh, I got you.
That's not even that's not a sacrificial thing. That's just a lye leaching stone. Some farmers just built that up there and left it there.
I see. Well, yeah, it could be, I guess, right?
Or could it be the fact that the farmer saw that and just used it for something else, and then that's where the idea spread from that?
Either way, it's a couple tons.
Exactly.
Balanced on these legs. I mean,
exactly. It's not like just it seems a lot of work to lye leach, right? Whenever you can do it off of smaller stones, exactly.
Yeah.
But here's where it starts
just
to get a little
stone
wild.
that's at an angle, and it would just run off.
Right.
I mean, what would you care? I don't know.
They did some carbon dating in the charcoal pits in that area too. Okay.
Yeah.
These are the dates they came up with: 2000 BC to 173 BC.
Yeah. Okay.
So they believe it was populated, of course, in that area with Native Americans, the ancestors, of course, of the Native Americans that we have in that area now. So Okay, now that throws another monkey wrench into the whole idea of, well, maybe it was just farmers from the 19th century, or maybe it was people that were up in that area, living in that area, that was working up there close to the copper mining. The whole area of this whole thing was, a busy little metropolis, as busy as it could be,
right,
with a small group of people. Now, in 1982, there's a fellow named David Stewart Smith, and he actually directed the restoration there at Mystery Hill, and he conducted an excavation on a quarry there, just north of the main site, and he found a little megalith area there. And under the supervision, of course, the New Hampshire state archaeologist, with David Smith, he and his research team excavated that quarry site. And they unearthed hundreds of chips and pressure flakes from stone. Now, folks, for those that don't know when I'm talking about pressure flaking, that's the way that native ancestors made arrowheads. If you take flint, it's easy. I've done it before. We've messed around with it and stuff. I've got some friends of mine that are flint nappers. It's takes a long time to get good at it, but you can really see how quick it is. But it's the chips and the pressure flakes basically as you're making knives and spearheads and arrowheads and things like that. That's what he found. Tons of those. Now, Dr. Smith and the state archaeologist at the time, both of them agreed that this was indigenous evidence now of indigenous tool manufacturing, and that it was consistent with what they knew to be Native American lithic techniques. But they couldn't tell you the date.
Yeah.
You can't date it. You have no idea.
Yeah, that's the problem, right?
There's exactly. So let me get this going here. You're going to like this part. This took place in 1823. There was a settler named Jonathan Pate. Now, Pate was a farmer who lived on that site from 1826 to 1848. Now, but he actually owned the property in 1823. So then he moved to it and all this. Now, there's a lot of different stories. You start looking into this guy and you start trying to do some research into Pate and find a neat, interesting story. You find out that people said that he ran an illicit still on that area. He was a moonshiner up in there. That he was a bank robber. He robbed banks and things like that and would hide it away up in there. And they say that he operated actually a stop on the Underground Railroad in that area too. That he had a bunch of this.
He was a busy man.
Exactly. But they do know that he used some of the structures, at least one of them, for a cellar for his house. And that there's some rumors in the area too that he actually built the structures, had them built with him and his sons. He had 5 sons, and they just built them for the heck of it, which it's always hard for me to believe that you would just build something for the heck of it, especially when it's that much work.
With that much trouble.
Exactly, yeah. Here's the wild thing about that. They actually found a stump of a tree that started growing by looking at the tree rings from 1769, okay?
Uh-huh.
That stump had actually locked some of the stones in place for an entrance in one of those areas, so they know he didn't build that one.
Right.
So it was there before it.
Well, and there's stonework everywhere, all the way through, New England. It's not like it's just
Jim
this
Vieira
guy's
talks
property.
about it. It's everywhere.
Miles of these stone fences.
Well, and
of these cairns and these other, things. And a lot of them have astronomical alignments. I mean, it's not all. That's why I think it's older, because a lot of those sites are older.
Yes.
So
I think it was an old site that's been built on by people now, much like the pyramids, much like a lot of the sites we discuss, is people found it and just kept living there and moving around and just adding to it, looking at what was built and adding to it.
Makes sense to me.
It makes a lot of sense. Now, he was an abolitionist. I mean, so they know for a fact that he actually had turned some of those little areas into a way station for the Underground Railroad. Yeah. So they know for a fact that he was, hiding slaves and getting them out of there. Apparently, though, that he built his home directly above or on top of several of these important ancient sites in this area, and that they estimate that during the next 50 years of him living there, that contractors bought and removed, you ready for this, 40% of the stone structures on Mystery Hill.
Really?
So it was almost twice as big as what it is today, except he sold it all off.
That's a shame. I would love to get up there and take a look at all that.
Well, and they even talk about what you said. Many of the stone structures that they used went into stone fences, houses. Some of them are even put in some of the older churches. Some of the stone in those older churches in New England area actually came from Mystery Hill, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
They said that some of the stone, bits of stone from the site, although most of the stone was used for street curbing, and some of it was even used in the construction of the Lawrence Dam.
Really?
Yeah. Now, they said that ancient inscriptions can still be found on these stones that are used to build some of these modern-day stuff. So you can find some of them, the way they're turned, you might still see some of it on there, which is kind of a bummer. Now, think about this. Now, here in 1893, there was a professor named Hugh Morrison, and he was actually the chairman of the architectural department of Dartmouth College. And him and Daniel Fisk, which was an author at the time, they actually wrote about the impossibility of megalithic structures at Mystery Hill and the surrounding New England area. And he thought it was the work, and so did the author, both from their studies, this is 1893, of early American settlers. That's what they believed it to be. Now, Phys.org actually published a thing online from September of last year, and it says America's Stonehenge, New Hampshire's Rock History or Hoax. And this is actually what it says on there. It says, using the astronomical chart on a table in the covered tower, visitors aim their gaze along worn arrows to huge upright stones hundreds of feet away. Beyond each slab of granite, clearings stretched the eye to the horizon on a dazzling day in late summer New Hampshire. Now, they say that on the autumn equinox, people will flock to the woods near the state line there to watch the sun rise or fall over the massive chunks of granite and decide for themselves whether they're standing amid relics of ancient history or, as they wrote on here, pure hooey. So there's plenty of chambers. It even talks about this. Let me read this to you. It says, it has drawn believers who say it's 1,000 or more years old and skeptics who say the evidence suggests that it was the work of a 19th century shoemaker, that the spooky centerpiece is the oracle chamber. So there's plenty of these different chambers, and they're going to talk about, I'm going to talk about some of these with you. All right. And as the oracle chamber is an interesting chamber. I thought there was a few more that was a little bit different. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm not really going to touch on that, but I'm going to touch on here. We're going to talk about the sunrise stone. Now, Mystery Hill, of course, like we said, it's got all these standing stones. Now, this slab, it aligns to the midwinter solstice sunrise and sunset, the November 1 sunrise and sunset, the spring and fall equinox sunrises and sunsets, the May 1 sunrise and sunset, the midsummer solstice sunrise and sunset, the August 1 sunrise and sunset, and true north.
Wow.
That's what this does. Seems a little bit, a little far-fetched to believe it was just luckily jobbed in the ground by some farmer.
Right?
When you get to this thing here. Now, there's stone walls throughout the site, and they actually provide over 200 astronomical alignments with the moon and 45 different stars and geographic points.
Wow.
One of the long stone walls aligns with true south. Another alignment wall allows one to observe the southernmost standstill of the moon on its 18.61 year metonic cycle.
Wow.
So it seems things are a little bit more precise than what we actually believed. And like I said, this is coming from the sunrise stone, okay?
Uh-huh.
Tons of these walls, all this different stuff. Of course, it's what we're talking about, that cycle that we're talking about is the imperfect elliptical orbit that the moon takes around the earth. So it actually allows for, there's like a 5-degree change of like north to south at the southern limit of the sun. And that's kind of what it's moving there. So the stone actually allows you to see it, but it allows for that little bit of wobble that's on it, that 5-degree wobble. So that's a pretty interesting thing in itself. Now, like I said, we discussed some of the stuff otherwise, as far as like this thing has south-facing chambers that are large quarried rock, and it's covered by several multi-ton slabs, and they're actually V-hut chambers above ground, wedge-shaped chambers. It leads to being more and more and more. Now, it does appear, if you start looking at these pictures and reading up on this, that it was basically a professional way that people approached this. Not in the building, but in the way they interacted with this. Like, they believe that the worshipers in this area of Mystery Hill, if you take it to be, like I say, a druid thing or anything like that, early, and obviously it has to have some sort of significance. It can't just be a thrown-together thing. There is reverence in this area. They believe that the worshipers treated it very professional, and they treated it in a very set way. So they would come in a certain way, crossing in a certain way, be at one certain area at sunrise, at another certain stone area doing their worship in midday, then maybe another certain stone area, in the evening, that it was done, like a routine, if you will, as it goes down through there.
Yeah.
Which to me is crazy to think of it that way. But would that, I don't know, there's a degree of that in my mind. It makes it seem almost more valid that it would be done by an advanced megalithic culture instead of just,
farmers.
Yeah, or hunter-gatherers, something along those lines. It just doesn't seem like it would be a thrown-together type thing. Like I said, now there's some other stuff that goes on. Here's a really cool deal. The calendar orientations of these slab-roof chambers, it rules them out as being constructed simply as root cellars, which is what everyone wants you to believe.
Yeah.
And that they believe that the early Americans, like I told you, the colonists in that area, or they even believe that some of the natives, the woodland natives area, actually used to, build things like this to put it in. Maybe they learned it. Maybe they just already knew, whoever. But they don't believe that any of this is actually that way. Because what's funny is they say a lot of the alignments actually line up with Celtic celebrations. That brings me back to the guy that's talking about the Irish monks. Was it him doing? I mean, I believe in a lot of stuff, but I'm not going to believe it so much that I'm going to go out in my yard, move around a bunch of rocks to line it all up just to try to sell my thing. But also, too, I don't need the money. Maybe those guys are trying to make money. Now, Byron Dix is an archaeoastronomer. Now, he actually determined that New England is what he thinks it's kind of eat up with underground chambers, is what he says. And he says that there are some 105 astronomically aligned chambers in Massachusetts, and 51 in New Hampshire, 41 in Vermont, 62 in Connecticut, 12 in Rhode Island, and 4 in Maine.
Wow.
So he says it's suffice to say that it is obvious that the alignments found at Mystery Hill and the other sites are not random.
Yeah.
He believes, because he said there's too many. There's too many that line up to things like that. And you know what? He's right. Like we discussed, look, you can laugh about it all you want to if one or two of them are right. But when you get a ton of these things, and like you've always said, if you walk around a car long enough, if it was in one spot, you'd be like, oh, that antenna lines up with that star. It must have been parked. There is a certain thing of randomness. It's always going to happen that way. But when you start looking at these stone structures here, there's way too much for it to be a coincidence, for it to be random, for it to be a root cellar. Whoever built these root cellars were genius, if that's the way it was, and they were just like, I'm going to build this whole root cellar, but I'm going to make it line up perfectly.
It wasn't. It was a lot of work. The hand-laid, the dry-laid stones, I'm sorry.
Yes.
The size of the stones, some of them are huge, very large. I've heard that the ancient giants are the ones that built a lot of that stuff.
Well, you're right.
Because they found artifacts, lots of copper jewelry, large axe heads and swords and other things like that. They've even found like a crown, a copper crown.
I've heard that too, yeah.
It's of enormous size, so it wouldn't fit over a normal human's head. They believed it was a giant's head. I don't know, man. I don't think that, look, that actual site, it may be manipulated by somebody later, like you're saying, more recent times, to dress it up, to draw tourism in. But I still think that a lot of the stuff is there from a very long time ago. And much like you mentioned earlier, if I move onto a piece of property and there's already an awesome stone fence built and I've got some sheep or I've got some cows, I'm going to use it.
Why not, right?
That's what these farmers did. So just because the farmers moved in and then produced soap or something doesn't mean that stuff wasn't already there when they found it. And they're like, I don't know what this sacrificial table is, but you know what? It'd make a good table for us making soap. Yeah. So we just start using it. It doesn't mean that that's why the table was created, though.
It just means that's what they used it for.
Yeah.
That more recent used it for. I'm going to leave y'all with this. There's one other one, folks, that's on there. There's a bunch of these structures you can go and read up on, but this one they actually call the Watch House. And it's there's a chamber there that's located just outside the main complex there at Mystery Hill. It's not very easily accessible to get into it, but they have a very small entrance hole. It's a narrow stone passageway that leads into a very large interior space, okay? It has a glacier boulder that they believe was used for one of the walls of the chamber, and then smaller stones. But anyway, the roof of this is massive. They believe it to be several ton slab of quarried, mind you, quarried granite. Now, on the back wall of this chamber of the watch house, the stones contain white quartz, which is what we talked about. You put it back there so when your solstices move through it earlier on. It's found in its pure form, of course, in many of the structures are all over the world, and like we discussed, treasured by everybody that has anything to do with any of this worship. But here's this, pretty cool. This chamber, the watch house, is aligned to the February 1st sunrise and lunar minor south. At sunrise, on that date of February, the sunlight enters the entrance of the chamber, and then it slowly moves along one of the walls until it illuminates the quartz crystals at the back wall and sparkles and lights up the whole chamber.
Right.
Why would you do that in a root cellar? That's all I want to leave that with. Why would you do it?
The amount of trouble it would take to create that. It seems preposterous to me that that's what that is.
I guess I'm
not saying that it could eventually be used as a root cellar, because you'd be like, hey, look,
for sure.
This is awesome.
I've used a pocket knife as a screwdriver, but it doesn't make it a screwdriver.
Exactly. Great. Yeah, exactly.
That's just not how it works. Look, I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it ain't. I'm saying I don't have any idea what is going on up there. But I think to me, it just feels like it's much, much older. Look, I don't know how to line stuff up to solstices. I'm sure if everyone listening, if we all sat down and did some research, we could all go home today and make a neat little bird bath, a little reflection mirror, and go, look, on February, whatever it is, this is going to do it. It's going to be awesome. But if it didn't mean anything to you, why would you do it? Would you do it just to be doing it, just to tell your friends, oh, yeah, by the way, that piece of rock's lined up? Because it'd be like you're listening to us talk about it. There's going to be people that don't give a damn. And I completely understand that. Mm-hmm. But why would you go through all that trouble to build all this and make sure it all lines up and all this if nobody was going to see it? If it was just going to be a root cellar. If nobody was going to be in that root cellar except for that one time a year just to see that stuff sparkle, why would you do it?
Right? What, are you bored?
But who was going to see it unless it's used as an area for worship? And that's what it feels like. It feels like an area used for worship in that whole area. That's what I think, folks. Like I said, I just barely scratched the surface. Please, I urge you, look into the Georgia Guidestones and look into America's Stonehenge. Some people are going to call it all a hoax. It's all a big deal. And you can hear some of the stuff I talk about. I'm sure it probably is. Some of it was probably made back in the day. But some of it also seems like there's a lot more history to bits and pieces than we think, much like the pyramids, much like the Great Pyramids. Some of it you can already tell. I mean, there's Cairo built around it. There's new houses built around Cairo.
Right.
It doesn't mean the pyramids were built right then. They were here when they built the houses.
Right.
So you kind of got to think that way. So kind of throw some of that out and move forward, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a great time looking it up. I had a great time digging into it and watching some of these little documentaries on YouTube. I urge everyone, please go check it out. You'll enjoy it. We're going to take us a quick break. You're listening to Expanded Perspectives. Back with Expanded Perspectives. Thank you so much, Cam, for bringing up those stories. I really enjoyed America's Stonehenge as well as the Georgia Guidestones. If you're really interested in America's Stonehenge, you can always go to a trusted source, Ancient American Magazine. You can go over there. You can buy these PDF copies or actual copies of the magazine, and those are written by archaeologists and investigators and stuff here in North America, and they've really got a lot written about America's Stonehenge as well as other things in New England and stuff. Anyways, moving on. Did you hear the sad news? Riley Martin passed away recently. Let's take a listen to Riley.
The Arbians. Now, the Arbians. Oh, yeah. The Arbians. Transitions are obviously reptilian. The Arbians. My name is Riley Martin. We're the Arbians. There's the Niptonians. There's reptilians. And insectilians 2 feet long. Oh, quad-tens in one. Qua-amsa, Laji one.
The world is not going to be the same place without that guy. I used to laugh at him when I was younger, listening to his alleged stories. Now, it says that Martin, who was age 69, if you're not familiar with him, he was one of Howard Stern's whack pack, and he alleged that back in 1953 he was abducted by aliens, and the name of these aliens is the Biavians. And he wrote a book called The Coming of Tan, and it was co-written by Okwa Tanjian was the co-author. And he used to always come on the Howard Stern show, and he would always talk about these different aliens that abducted him, insectoids and, reptilians, and it was just a lot of fun, but very entertaining. Cam, do you remember him? Do you remember Riley Martin?
Loved Riley Martin. Look, man, I grew up listening to Stern.
Yeah.
I think a ton of us grew up listening to Howard Stern, and he was the first person that I was like, this guy's crazy. When I heard him, the whole deal. But look, I can't cast judgment on anybody. I'm an idiot myself, but I loved his stories. Here's what I loved about Riley. Whether or not you want to believe it or not, and it's okay if you don't believe anything that me and Kyle ever discuss, or if you believe everything we discuss, whatever, there's a passion to certain people. And Riley had a passion when he told those stories. And like I said, do I believe some of it was embellished? Of course. I believe once he got on the show and became part of Stern's whack pack and all that stuff, that he would embellish the story. But, I mean, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't become a popular person on someone's talk show, period, and kind of embellish your story to kind of make you a little bit bigger? Everybody does it. I mean, it's just like a friend of yours telling a friend about you, and then when you get there, you kind of overreact a little bit more than what you normally would because you're trying to sell something, a little bit of yourself. I completely understand that. But love him or hate him, that he had a passion for telling the stories of the stuff that happened to him, and I appreciate that completely.
Yeah, and my favorite part was when they would actually prank call him and goof on him and stuff. The guys would do that. That was amazing.
Yes, that was awesome.
Moving on. What was that you were going to tell me? You were telling me off air that you were going to talk about?
Well, I found this looking around. Man, we always laugh. The idea, I want an exosuit.
Oh, yeah?
You know what I mean? I'm like, that would be cool. Now, I don't want it to be like drilled into my skull and my bones and stuff like on Matt Damon in Elysium.
Yeah.
But those exosuits are cool. But I never thought about this. This comes from TheVerge.com, and I was looking around and found this, and I'm like, you know how awesome this is? It says I aged 40 years in 15 minutes by wearing this exoskeleton.
What?
Get a load of what they're doing. It's being showcased at the CES, and it's designed to make those wearing it feel as if they've aged 40 years. It adds on weight, it restricts movement, and simulates a number of age-related conditions. It even has a face thing that comes down where it affects your eyesight.
No, I want the opposite. I want to feel like I'm younger.
Well, but you think about what this would actually do. This allows younger people, if they're going to be a doctor, younger people to actually experience what it's like to be older and go, now I kind of get the idea of what I need to work towards. Now, look, it's not 100%. You're not going to be in pain when you move, but your range of motion is limited. The speed at which you move is limited. Your eyesight is limited. All of this stuff is like you're being trapped. Lauren Grush actually wrote this, and they got to try it on. Lauren tried this thing on, said after spending 15 minutes getting strapped into the suit, I was taken through a demonstration of all the ailments the exoskeleton can replicate. The first group of disorders all revolved around eyesight. This is a VR-type headset was fitted over my eyes, and a Genworth representative showed me what would happen if I developed conditions like macular degeneration, cataracts, or glaucoma. I got to spark up a blunt, and it doesn't say that, but it says the headset blurred and distorted the images, and I was seeing to coordinate with each issue. As one might expect, the changes were unpleasant. And Lauren talks about going through all of this, about the demonstration with the mobility, about how to walk, try to get on a treadmill, tried to work the arms. It's like he had rheumatoid arthritis. Said it nearly fell off the machine. It said it added an extra 40 pounds of the suit. I mean, the whole thing is insane, but it's something that we never think of that. We never think of going the other direction with it.
Yeah.
And you know what? I really enjoy the idea. There's even a video of Lauren that you can go to online and watch. The name of the video here, This Exoskeleton Makes You Feel 40 Years Older, and it's CES 2016. And you can go watch her walk around. She's walking around the show, the whole thing in it. And you can just tell the way she's moving, it's not pleasant. Like, there's no way it can be an enjoyable thing. But I saw that. I'm like, you know what? That is a heck of an idea. I really do enjoy them thinking outside the box. Instead of making everybody superheroes, let's make it where you can experience what it's like to live in someone else's shoes. So maybe it's easier for a doctor to relate, or maybe you put this thing on or whatnot like that. You don't really understand, like maybe nurses or people that work in a nursing home that maybe, okay, let me think outside the box right quick. Sometimes people have to go to classes because they don't know how to interact with people, like they have little anger issues or they have,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
What if this was involved in that? What if a nurse was really good at her job, or he was really good at his job, either way, but they didn't quite have the bedside manner that they needed? They were kind of, you know what I mean, a little rough.
I've met people like that.
What if you strapped them in this and said, look, you're going to spend 2 weeks in this thing right here every day till you understand what it's like to be the people you're trying to help?
Yeah, I got you. That's a good idea, yeah.
It's like an empathy suit.
Yeah.
I know they make, what are they called, empathy bellies, so people can understand what it's like to be pregnant. Women wear empathy bellies at times, and men can wear them, where they have like a certain way they strap you in and it pushes on your bladder. I don't know why I'm all hunkered over here. But anyway, they do all that. What if that was like this? This is like an empathy suit where you would understand what it's like to deal with an older person.
Yeah.
And looking at this
that's not
now,
a bad idea.
It's
You're
not,
100%
right? So I don't know. I just thought it was cool. I just rambled. Sorry, folks. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's good. Very interesting. That's a good idea. I would like to try that on. I want to try one of the suits on that gives me superhuman abilities to run on the wall and things and jump off. You know that's coming. You know it's coming.
You want the Call of Duty suit.
Exactly.
I'm going to boost jump, run on a wall.
Yeah, right. Well, thanks again for everybody listening to us here on Expanded Perspectives. If you'd like to help the show out, don't forget, you can go on iTunes and you can rate and write us a review. We would really appreciate it. If you want to support the show, you can always go to expandedperspectives.com and sign up for the Elite service. And there you'll get an extra episode every Thursday, including access to our entire back catalog. If you'd like to share a story with Expanded Perspectives, you can email us at expandedperspectives@yahoo.com, or you can simply go to the website, hit the contact button, and a little form will pop up and you can submit your story. If you'd like to call the show, we always like that, 817-945-3828. You can follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You know the deal, folks. Cam, how you liking your new phone?
It's different to get used to. I moved into the future. I moved into.
You had a jitterbug before this.
Yeah, I had a really
a Nokia. You had a Nokia.
Really old.
You were playing Snake all the time.
I had a really old iPhone because I hate any sort of upgrades. I hate
what model
any
was
of
it?
that stuff.
What was it?
I'm not even going to say. I'm embarrassed, but it finally quit working. So I had to go get a new one, and I don't like change that much. I just don't really. But you know what? So far, it's taken me a little getting used to, but so far I like it.
Yeah.
So hopefully I keep up with it. We'll see.
All right. Well, everybody have a good week. Don't work too hard. For you Elite members, we'll speak to you on Thursday. For everybody else, stay out of trouble. I'm Kyle Filson. He's Cam Hale.
Peace.